with its vast rivers, rich oil deposits, and massive cultural mosaic formed by hundreds of different ethnic groups. Nigeria was known as the Giant of Africa. The civilizations established in these lands for millennia by deeply rooted peoples such as the Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo symbolized the fertility of the geography. However, in the late 19th century, with British merchants and colonial governors setting foot on these lands, the fate of a massive people began to be sacrificed to imperial interests. This was the story of a giant that united disparate tribes through artificial borders and then rose for freedom. In the late 19th century, the British Royal Niger Company established itself on the Nigerian coast to seize trade routes and palm oil resources in the region. The company's commercial pressure soon transformed into military occupation. In 1914, British colonial governor Lord Lugard united the Muslim Emirates in the north with the Christian and indigenous tribal regions in the south under a single administrative rule. Though this artificial union sowed the seeds of future internal conflicts, it also triggered a consciousness of resistance against a common colonizer. The British colonial administration increased economic exploitation by imposing heavy taxes on the indigenous population. In 1929, the Aba women's riots, spearheaded by Igbo women in the city of Aba, became one of the greatest popular uprisings against colonial taxes. Thousands of women poured into the streets to protest colonial outposts. Dozens of women lost their lives as a result of fire opened by British soldiers. But this resistance showed the entire world that the Nigerian people would not bow to colonizers. Nigeria was transformed into a supplier of tin, coal, cocoa, and palm oil, vital to British industry. While the native population was forced to work cheaply in their own land, the country's wealth was siphoned off to London. Education and healthcare services were inadequate, and political rights were restricted. The colonial administration sought to maintain control by fanning tribal divisions through a policy of divide and rule. Following World War II, modern nationalist movements rose under the leadership of figures like Nnamdi Azikiwe and Obafemi Awolowo. Newspapers, trade unions, and political parties were established to build democratic and national pressure against British rule. Nigerian youth educated in London began challenging colonialism on legal and political platforms. Britain agreed to grant gradual autonomy to Nigeria due to mounting nationalist pressures and the international climate. Constitutional conferences held throughout the 1950s prepared the country for independence under a federal structure. Despite political friction between different states and tribes, the shared goal of ending British colonial rule remained paramount. On October 4, 1960, Nigeria officially brought an end to British colonial rule and declared its independence. The streets of Lagos brimmed with cries of "Nigeria is independent." As the British flag was lowered, the new green-white-green Nigerian flag was raised in its place. The country's first prime minister was Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. The Giant of Africa had finally taken its destiny into its own hands. Independence brought immense responsibilities for Nigeria, possessing a massive population and a multi-ethnic structure. Artificial borders and intertribal tensions left behind by the colonial era plunged the country into political crises and tragic civil wars, the Biafran War in subsequent years. The price of freedom became a protracted internal struggle to preserve unity and cohesion. With the Declaration of Independence, the British Empire's greatest stronghold in West Africa passed into history. Colonial governors and British military units departed the country. Nigeria became the true owner of its own soil and subterranean riches, particularly petroleum discovered later. Millions of people across Nigeria celebrated independence with traditional dances and music in the streets. This giant rising in the heart of Africa had broken the chains of colonialism and prepared to play a leading role in the continent's future. The story of Nigeria showed how a giant divided by artificial borders achieved freedom by uniting its internal forces. But when we journey to the south of Africa, to that resilient country that resisted Portuguese colonialism for 500 years and was subsequently dragged into a bloody civil war, Angola, what story awaits us? In our next video, we will cover Angola's War of Independence. Stay tuned.